You've written extensively about receiving the Spirit, receiving the counsel of the Lord in your own life through personal revelation. And I think you're known for that almost. And you talk about it. As I've been listening today, I've heard you make reference to that revelation and that personal, prompting from the Lord over and over again. What does it feel like for you to receive that?
Well, it comes in different ways. Sometimes it's like a jolt of electricity. I call it an aha experience. You have those when you're reading the scriptures, you're reading along, and all of a sudden you go, oh, why didn't I ever see that before? Mm-hmm. And other times it is so gentle and so almost incomprehensible that it's easy to miss it. That's one of the intriguing things about it, It can come as thunder or fire from heaven. It can come so subtly that unless you're really paying attention, you can miss it. But as President Packer and others have said so often, it almost always comes as a feeling. Mm-hmm. I used to wonder, why is it called a still voice? The still small voice. Why a still voice? That's an oxymoron. It contradicts itself. Now, I don't ask that because it's not a voice you hear, it's a voice you feel. And especially having those experiences, choosing new stake presidencies, mm-hmm. You learn to just think, to look inwardly and examine your heart and think, what am I feeling right now? Mm-hmm. And I've been wrong. There's times you think, okay, I've got this one right, and you go ahead and it's wrong. But the more you do it, the more you start to say, okay, that's what it felt like then. This is what I'm feeling now, so I'm gonna trust this one.
Do you recall when you had your first experience with personal revelation for yourself?
I think, as I've thought back, I can't specify them, but I'm sure, like many children do, I prayed for little things and got answers, mm-hmm. Trivial things. But that experience with the paper route was a really significant one. That was a turning point. A few years later, I had another one. I was working at Murray Theater as an usher, and my oldest brother was on his mission, so because we had to work till midnight or 12:30, my parents would let me drive his car so they didn't have to come and get me. Instead of going straight home, I'd just get in and I'd take an extra 10 or 15 minutes and drive all by myself and kind of unwind. And this one night I came out, and it was a beautiful summer evening, and so I got in the car and I actually turned right onto Vine Street. And just as I did so, I just had this thought came, and it wasn't anything dramatic. It wasn't a shout. It was just, oh, just go home. I can still remember thinking, well, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to go straight home? And just go home. So I thought, well, I am tired. So I just made a U-turn and went straight home. Never thought another thing about it. The next afternoon when I got home, my mother said, you may want to look at the paper, and hands me the Deseret News, the second section. And here's a picture about this big of a piece of metal that as I looked at, I realized had once been a car. Ooh. And the headline was 4 teens killed in Murray. And first thing I looked at was to see if she was telling me, because these were from my school, and they weren't. They were from another school. So I started reading, and this took place on Vine Street just west of 9th East. And that was the route I took. And then it said two things. It estimated they were traveling at about 90 or 100 miles an hour from all the evidence. And they said, and it happened exactly at 12:40-something. I had looked at my clock when I turned around and went home, and that was about 7 or 8 minutes before. So the next night, before I went to work, I went up and I drove that route. Actually went to the tree and could see where the car had hit it, and drove that route back to the theater. It took me almost exactly the same time.
Wow.
And again, I thought, you know, the Lord protected me. I really believe that. I don't know what would have happened, but I think he got me off that road for a reason. But why did my mother feel impressed to show me the newspaper?
She didn't know you were going to maybe go that way.
No, she knew nothing about that. And again, he protected me, but why did he want me to know? Mm-hmm. And that was another one of those confirming experiences, that he's not only blessing us, he's trying to teach us about himself. And that was a turning point.
You've got this strong affirmation in your life of the Lord's presence and his participation in what you're doing. What about the counsel that you have for people who are wrestling with receiving personal revelation, who don't know how to recognize it or don't act upon it? What counsel would you have for them?
Well, I love the Book of Mormon, but the Doctrine and Covenants is the handbook of personal revelation. Mm-hmm. I went through and listed a whole bunch of scriptures one day when I was preparing a lecture. I was amazed. Probably 95, 96% come from the Doctrine and Covenants. Mm-hmm. Principles of how revelation works and what it feels like. It's peace. It's still small voice. It comes as thoughts and feelings, you know. So just coming to understand it better is a really good one. Another thing I've learned, my dad, when I was growing up, had a saying, which I hated as a kid. He used to say, good judgment comes from experience. And experience, well, that comes from poor judgment. As I've thought about revelation, some of the ways I've learned to recognize revelation is when I was wrong. When I was so sure. I can remember having feelings for a girl that I was so sure she was the one. But she wasn't. I mean, she was a wonderful girl, but it turns out that she wasn't the one I married. And so to learn through your own experience, sometimes by making mistakes. But then it's also really helpful. I often just say, Heavenly Father, if this one isn't from you, let me know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to go forward.